Alright, welcome back, and this is game number 3 between Doejuly and Leebokgu, and this should be a beautiful game for your ears to hear, and your eyes to see and behold, and your mind to comprehend. Because this should be the decider between these two almost Gosu level players. Well, maybe that's a bit of an understatement. It depends on your perception of what is Gosu and what is not. But here again we have Doejuly, who is playing under the name Misophobia on the teal Protoss on the top left corner of the map, up against Leebokgu, who is on the middle left of the map, and he's also playing Protoss, the white Protoss. And since the score is 1-1, both players, one is Protoss against Terran, it seems they've decided on playing Protoss against Protoss to be their deciding match. A true display of skill. And who will win, who will lose, will all be up to who makes the right choices and the least amount of mistakes. Or whoever is just the way better player than the other one. It entirely depends on how this game will unfold. So yeah, then nothing much interesting happens in the start as usual. And Leebokgu and Doejuly are both exactly doing the exact same thing. Leebokgu is a little bit ahead of Leebokgu. That's purely because the Doejuly sent his probe this way around instead of this way around. So at the moment, Leebokgu is a little bit ahead. Probably had also a little bit of a better probe split, because his minerals are a little bit ahead of Leebokgu. So there is... It seems they're actually about at the same point, actually. The difference is absolutely minimal. So both going for 2 gateways and a pylon after their nexus. Doejuly starts off the scout, but he goes the wrong way around. And let's see where Leebokgu is going to scout. He hasn't decided to scout just yet. He's first adding on 2 more gateways, or is a single one. Alright, 2 more gateways. It's a 4 gateway build. Probe is sent out. There is no 3rd and 4th gateway for Doejuly. Doejuly instead opted for the forge, which leads me to believe we'll be seeing a cybernetics core and a gas very soon. Otherwise, this would have been a very bad option to go for. But this does give Leebokgu slightly more offensive options, given that he can take down this cannon later on into the game. If he fails to take down that cannon, the game will flip around in Doejuly's favor, because Doejuly is going for a more tech-centric build, I assume, though he's now adding on 2 more gateways. That throws a wrench in my prediction of seeing a cybernetics core coming out early and gas coming out early as well. He will be behind Imp-Psi. He's already behind Imp-Psi, actually. He's already in 24 against 30. The gas already come out for Leebokgu, but there's no forge for Leebokgu out yet. He's going for a cybernetics core instead, making zealots from all those 4 gateways. Now the zealots from Doejuly are streaming in, looking for an opportunity to fight. He's gonna follow these into the base, see where they are going to be ending up. Little zealot friends. There's no cannon out there. Both zealots are splitting up, going their separate ways. And both players are just dancing back and forth. Now Leebokgu's probe is about to find Doejuly's base, so that gives him some information on the status of where Doejuly is at the moment. Doejuly is a little bit ahead in minerals because he kept those probes on his minerals for a longer period of time than Leebokgu did. Leebokgu's behind in probes as well, which more or less kind of surprises me because he didn't lose a single probe as of yet in his entire game, meaning Doejuly has been more consistent in keeping his probe pump up. He does have the gas, and Cybernetics Core has Singularity Charge on the way. Doejuly has already started a Citadel of the Dune without a robotics facility, so that means he's going for Dark Templars to counter the move that Leebokgu made. The game is still pretty much at a stalemate, and it's all gonna be about whether Leebokgu gets a forge and gets a robotic facility out to counter those Dark Templars. I don't think he has seen the Citadel of Adun yet, because the probe that he sent into Doejuly's base died before that Citadel of Adun was started. Adun is out there. Still no robotics, still no forge. So the Dark Templars that Doejuly has to be going for, well, he's going for flags. I think it would have been really beneficial for him to go for Dark Templars, because Dark Templars would have completely caught Leebokgu off guard. Now he's kind of playing into the cards that Leebokgu was playing, because now he's going for lags and zealots with lags. Whereas Leebokgu has a bigger mass and is now also adding gateways onto his base. And Dragoons plus Zealots, in my opinion, do better than just speeded Zealots. Although Leebokgu will not have speed on his Zealots, but he does get the opportunity to take down a couple of gateways and throw a wrench into some of the reduction plans that Doejuly has. He will also be able to micro his Dragoons backwards, as we're seeing right here, as the fight has erupted. And Leebokgu is, I think, somewhat winning this fight here. Most of these Zealots that Doejuly has are on low HP and will have to retreat because they get blocked off from attacking those Dragoons in the back. Dragoons in the back having free fire. Once those lags come up, Doejuly will be able to get a surround off on those Dragoons. Given that Leebokgu doesn't micro his Dragoons as well as he could. He micros his Dragoons back, sending them up to the corner, hiding them behind the Zealot line. The Zealots now moving back towards the Dragoons to block the Zealots from Doejuly from attacking those Dragoons. There's a gateway there. There's still no Templar's Archive. It's just adding on more gateways, and he's completely gambling on going for Zealot lags to get that surround off. He does get a surround off, but Leebokgu is microing his Dragoons away pretty nicely. But he's gonna micro his units into a corner. He might be able to get out there. Very slowly microing away, trying to minimize the damage. But Doejuly's Zealots are kind of doing a pretty good job, intentionally getting a surround off on those Dragoons, microing them as well. Stutter stepping forward, just as Leebokgu is stutter stepping backwards with his Dragoons. Let's see, he does have a robotic facility now. He's got an observer on the way. There's no Templar's Archive, no Citadel of Adun just yet. He's completely banking in on those Dragoons to micro. It's costly, but he's had in probes over Doejuly. Doejuly had a short period of time where he lapsed in his probe production, so Doejuly does have the lead in this game at the moment. There's still no Templar's Archive for Doejuly. Doejuly is once again just completely investing in those speed Zealots, trying to get himself the overhand by just having a bigger mass over Leebokgu. But Leebokgu now has a forge up and is now starting cannons around his nexus. So it will be harder for Doejuly to utilize those Zealots because it's hard for Zealots to get in between those gateways. And that does give Leebokgu the advantage over the game because he can defend himself more easily than Doejuly can attack. If he had Dragoons, he could have been able to snipe those gateways from afar. Zealots going in, Zealots getting a surround off on those Dragoons, but Dragoons migrating backwards, deeper back to the nexus, back to the cannons. Some of the Zealots are now within the range of the cannons. The Zealots are taking more damage than I would like them to see, but Doejuly is getting a group penetration in between those gateways, getting attack and damage on those cannons, but Leebokgu ends up winning the match here because he could hide his Dragoons behind the wall of Zealots. Zealots still no speed. The Citadel of Adun is now coming up known as a robotic facility, and there is... He's gonna make a Reaver very soon once he has the gas for it. He also has shuttle speed on the way. Still no Citadel of Adun for Leebokgu. Leebokgu doesn't need a Citadel of Adun just yet because he will be just completely fine having the Reaver shuttle combination to either assist his ground forces or to go for a drop. He's still ahead in supply, which is mostly because he has more probes than Doejuly does, since it's 61 against 50. Although now also more units are gonna come out because Doejuly just lost a huge amount of his mass. Doejuly once again being the aggressor, trying to chase those Dragoons around, but the Dragoons get microed backwards very nicely behind those Zealots. Now the Zealots from Doejuly have to pull back into the middle. Let's see what he has. He finally started a... He has a Templar's Archive finished, researching Psionic Storm. There's a shuttle on the way, and shuttle speed is also on the way. But Leebokgu beat him to the shuttle and the Reaver tech. So he might be able to get a drop off before Doejuly can defend himself properly or get his own drop off. Cannons are being constructed around the main, and cannons on the side as well. Another attack is starting, but Doejuly decides to pull back because he sees that there are simply too many units from Leebokgu. Leebokgu is now ahead by at least 40 Psi over Doejuly. Close to 50 actually. Now it's back to 42. Leebokgu just balling his units up, preparing himself for the offensive counter-strike. There is still no Citadel of Adun for Leebokgu, so no Zealot lags. That might hurt him a little bit in the fights, but his mass is simply way bigger than Doejuly's mass is. He's got way more Dragoons that he can hide behind those Zealots. The Zealots not having speed doesn't end up hurting him all that much, in my opinion. Alright, the Zealots forming a wall. Doejuly cannot get a good surround up on those Dragoons. Decides to pull back. Now the Reaver with the shuttles, the shuttle with the Reavers is flying in, but it's not going for the drop because it needs and doesn't have distraction from those cannons. So instead, he's just gonna put them on the ground to assist his entire absolutely humongous mass. He's already 60 psi ahead over Doejuly. Doejuly has been doing a really poor job of keeping his mass up, mostly because he lost so many units to those, in my opinion, poorly chosen fights that he kept taking in Leebokgu's base. Now the Reavers are cleaning up ground units all around. This honestly looks like a one game for Leebokgu. Leebokgu definitely has the upper hand here. There's nothing Doejuly can do in this situation because he's 90 psi behind on Leebokgu. Leebokgu doing a very good job. This proves that you don't really need Zealot legs in order to win PvP. You can just make Dragoons and Reavers and use the non-speeded Zealots as a wall to block the enemy Zealots from attacking and hurting your own Dragoons. And that does end up saving you units and minerals, because you can just keep your Dragoons alive and build up a bigger and bigger mass. Their drop did come down on Leebokgu, which I want to believe that it would make a difference, but it honestly doesn't. Doejuly is too small, has lost too much of his base, is incapable of producing, has lost a lot of pylons as well. Once he loses 2 more pylons, he will be completely unable to even produce anything at all. And he can mark out that Reaver there in the back, but it won't make a difference because there's simply too many Dragoons hammering away at his gateways, hammering away at his pylons and his base, slowly pushing him in, reducing the size of his base. So the drop did land on Leebokgu, which I honestly wasn't in time to switch over to. But it makes no difference whatsoever. The size of the mass Leebokgu has is simply way too big. At any time now, I expect Doejuly to be tapping out, which should mean the win for Leebokgu in this series of best of 3. Doejuly bites the dust, Leebokgu grabs the upper hand, and wins the game. Quite a quick game, 11 minutes and 35 seconds. And honestly, it all came down to Doejuly just picking a really poor Protoss versus Protoss strategy that played into all the strengths of Leebokgu's choices in terms of strategy and build and unit positions, and even his micro was pretty well executed. So once again, I'm led to believe that Doejuly is not a 1 versus 1 specialist, but instead purely a team play specialist, 2 versus 2 and 3 versus 3. Whereas Leebokgu is pretty much entirely a 2 versus 2 and 1 versus 1 specialist, more so a 1 versus 1 specialist, as he plays it pretty much just all the time. So yep, thanks for watching. It was a pretty interesting game. A nice conclusion to the series between these two players from Korea. And I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. See you next time, and have a good day.